believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, damn it, Ricardo Brandis, also known as Ricky Brandis, and another great conversation for you today. Today we have Shelby Hosana, who is one of the founders of the first dating community website for the unvaccinated, and it's called Unjected, and we do talk about their services and what the website is all about. But you can also go to their website, unjected.com, which, of course, you can find in the show description if you want to learn a little bit more about the company and all their services and how to connect with the community. And she also hosts a show called The Unjected Show, which is available on all the video platforms. The Ripple Effect Podcast is also available on, so definitely check that out. And, of course, that will also be in the show description. She also was on episode 75 of the Union of the Unwanted, and the reason why I'm referring to it is because it was an amazing conversation about the Hawaiian fires and all the conspiracies and cover-ups and everything that's going on with that. So if that's a topic you're interested in, please check out episode 75 of the Union of the Unwanted. Of course, you can get the audio everywhere, and the videos are available on Rockfin and Odyssey. And before we get into this amazing conversation with Shelby, let me remind you guys, this is a value for value show. If you get some value out of this conversation or any of the conversations I bring to you, please consider giving some value back. I know times are tough, money is tight, but there's plenty of ways you can support the show if you can't financially do it. You can rate the show, review the show, share the show, put it on your social media platforms, send it to your friend, write reviews, thumbs up, wherever you watch or listen to the Ripple Effect Podcast. Just leave a comment, like it, thumbs up, subscribe, whatever you can do to help the algorithms work in our favor, because of course they're suppressing shows like these. But of course, if you are in a good financial situation, if you can support the show financially, even just a little bit, please consider doing so. You can sign up for our Patreon page and be a monthly supporter, which is one of the best ways of supporting the Ripple Effect Podcast and my work. I know just about everybody listening, I would hope just about everybody listening can afford donating as little as $1 a month to the Ripple Effect Podcast and this project and helping expand this project. I get thousands of downloads and tons of people viewing the show on Rumble and Rockfin and all the platforms I'm on. I only need a small percentage of you guys to donate what I know you can afford, and that's $1 a month to eventually do the show full time and keep expanding it and growing it and put out more episodes more often. So if you can do that, it's very much appreciated. And I haven't forgot everyone who has been doing it. Everyone that has been donating money, people who have been Patreons for a long time, I truly, truly appreciate it. People who've been checking out the merch store, that's another great way of supporting the show. Check out the merch store. You can go directly to it by going to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. Get hoodies, mugs, t-shirts, kids' clothes. We also now have stickers if you want to put stickers on your laptop or your water bottle or whatever it may be. Please check out the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. And you can also find the links to the merch store in the show description or on my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. So please consider supporting the show if you can. And other ways of supporting the show is checking out our sponsors. One being Content Safe. Matt from Content Safe is a regular on this show, also a regular on the Union of the Unwanted. And what he does is he syncs all my video channels together. So if you're a streamer, YouTuber, gamer, content creator, hit up Matt from Content Safe. Let him know you're a listener of the Ripple Effect Podcast, and he'll definitely hook you up and save you tons of time with uploading. The next sponsor is the University of Reason, created by Richard Grove, who is a documentary filmmaker, thinker, philosopher, podcaster, host of the Grand Theft World podcast. And he created this thing called the Autonomy Courses, which is to help people connect with the freedom, liberty-minded community, also learn some new skills, expand on some skills they might have, and just give people another option if they feel like they're at a crossroads in life and they're uncertain about which road to go down. So if you're a hamster on a wheel and you think you need to change things up, try something new, sign up for the autonomy courses and help yourself and support the Ripple Effect podcast at the same time. And then my last sponsor is one of my favorites because it's the only one that I use multiple times every day, and that's Element Electrolytes. It's a powder mix you put in your water. It tastes awesome, has no artificial colors or flavors, only the things you need, none of the stuff you don't need, and it has the right dosages. So it has enough of the potassium, magnesium, and sodium to actually make a difference in your performance. And so many of us struggle with dehydration, constantly just trying to find time to hydrate in our busy lives and our busy schedules, especially if you're an athlete or you work outside and you're sweating. Check out Element Electrolytes. It's a healthy way of staying hydrated. It's keto friendly. It's fasting friendly if you're doing those type of diets. If you want to optimize your performance mentally and physically, it will help with cramping. It will help with brain fog, muscle fatigue, and so many other symptoms that are due to dehydration. And I know there's a lot of hydration options out there, but most of them have artificial colors, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners. This is sweetened with the stevia leaf, so it's a natural sweetener. So please check out the links in the show description. Get yourself some Element. Stay hydrated and support the Ripple Effect podcast. And if you use the link in the show description or on my website, you'll get a free gift with every purchase. So please check it out. If you want more information on the product, on their website, they have tons of science, tons of studies showing you why this dosage and this formula is so important for optimizing your body and mind. If you want to learn even more about the product, check out episode 464 of the Ripple Effect podcast when we talk about health, food, climate. And Rob also had an amazing appearance on JRE, which was episode 1784. I highly recommend you guys checking out that conversation. So stay hydrated, support the Ripple Effect podcast. At the same time, get a free gift with every purchase. Enjoy this amazing conversation, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.
How's it going?
Good. You hear me clearly, hopefully?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound awesome.
Awesome. How's your day today?
Not bad. Just, crazy Mondays. You know how it is with kids.
Yeah.
Run
Oh, yeah. I totally do. How many kids do you have?
I got two. I got a 8-year-old boy and then a 7-year-old girl. So we got two, and I know you got 3.
I got 3. Yep. My 6, 3, and 1.
Nice.
Still in the thick of it, but it's the best job in the world, right?
It's the hardest, the most difficult, but the most rewarding without a doubt, and definitely the most important one. And it's weird. I'm sure you've probably had similar experiences because you seem like a very active and very involved mother and really embracing the opportunity of being one. But I meet parents that it's like, I don't get it. It was like life-changing for me. Even when I knew it was going to be life-changing, like people would tell me and I'm like, I get it. And then I go through it, I'm like, okay, I didn't get it.
I didn't get
life-changing. And then yet, like, I meet people and it seems to have zero effect on their outlook on things. And I'm like, I just relate to the fact that you just went through the greatest experience you'll ever go through. And yet, like, you're just okay with like sending your kid to daycare and going on with your day. Like,
I can't even handle that. And I'm on the same page as you because it's like, it's almost like they're missing their, like the natural instinct gene. And I was the same way. I was like, before you have children, you're like, whatever. And then you have kids and then your mind is just blown and you're like, whoa, I actually realized everything that my parents ever told me. Maybe they really were right. You're like, but yeah, I mean, it's almost like they want that on purpose though, just so that next generation is like less fighters, like less warriors. They're more indoctrinated because they started in daycare so early. I know some people don't have the opportunity, to do otherwise, but yeah, I'm right there with you.
Well, that definitely seems like a big part of it. Yeah. I mean, one, I do not, yeah, I cannot relate with people that are like that. It's weird because it's like, I, who you end up being attracted to later, once you become a parent, it's almost like
Right.
I kind of judge people based on how they are as parents. It's like, oh, I like them as a person,
Wow.
but I can't get over the fact that they're such horrendous parents that I don't want
Yes.
to, or I don't want, it's like I just like lose a little bit of respect for you because it's like,
I'll lose a lot of respect for you.
yeah, I was being polite. I was being polite. But it's weird. And then the opposite, where there's people that like I really, I'm like, I don't really care for this person, but like I see them with their kids and it hits a soft spot.
Right.
I'm like, you know what? Like, there's a good person in there, so
Right.
yeah. So it's weird, you just it's almost, I kind of compare it to, even though it's probably not a great comparison, but it's like the military, right? Like going to war. I could read
Yeah.
1,000 books, I could watch 1,000 movies, but unless you experience it, you couldn't really understand the
Yeah.
physical and emotional experience of going through it. Like becoming a parent's kind of very similar. But I also think that you're making a very good point, and probably one we could start off expanding on. It's just this
Yeah.
idea that they're trying to just decay the family and the idea of the family. Like it's not a important idea
Right.
or philosophy. This idea that we should have a family, have and I guess for lack of a better term, like a small community, a small tribe, and take care of one
Hmm.
another. And it's just like they're trying to act like it's not significant. Now I have like mixed feelings about like capitalism for the same reason, because it's one of those things where like yes, socialism always leads to government overreach and communism eventually, because you just
Right.
giving them more and more of your resources, your money, your taxes, authority, and then next thing you know, you have no freedoms left. And but I also see the issue with like being so like capitalism, instead of it being just a way of running economy, it becomes a philosophy of life, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like it's all about work and it's all about financially getting ahead. And then it's like we lose what's really important and what truly makes us happy.
Yeah, they've disconnected us so far from our bodies, from our spiritual, from our minds. And that was the first step, right? In the divide and conquer is make sure that the families are separated and make sure that, mothers and fathers have to go to work. And when it's just almost financially impossible these days as well, just to get by with how literally, the dollar is worth nothing. But, it's that's what they wanted, and it's playing out pretty well because you're having this feminine that has to kind of go into the masculine, masculine has to cross over into the feminine, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like when you're looking at these roles that maybe we need to be in to shift like this next stage, yeah, it's like we're kind of like idling right now. And I was talking to Scott about it on our podcast the other day when it was Matt Walsh did is like, what is a woman? It's like, well, what is a man? Like, we need to do that one. What is manhood? What is a man? Because, you know, it's like women will follow the lead of the men in the community, and we have for a long time. And it's kind of feel like it's to a point where even as myself, like as a mother, like watching stuff happen around me, and I go, why isn't there more men that want to stand up and go, why don't we just fucking kill these guys already? Quite frankly. But it's kind of to the point where I feel like mothers are having to rise up too, because it's like there's no men to follow the lead of. So it's an interesting like world that we live in right now. But I'm grateful for like this truth and freedom community, because like people like you that have gotten to me, like there is still real like men that are like that understand what they're fighting for.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, there's nothing wrong with tomboys or people who
Right.
grew up with tomboys, but the thing that drives me nuts, it's like today if you're a tomboy, they're like, hey, we should give you a hormone replacement. Back in the day, it was like if you're a tomboy, you're just like, and I had girlfriends,
Yeah.
girlfriends, but friends that were girls that were tomboys, and we would go to concerts together. I was grew up a big metalhead, and we're like, oh, we like the same type of music. We go to concerts together, or we play sports together, or whatever.
Right.
work out together, whatever it may be. And it's like, okay, you're just a girl who likes some things that most of the time guys typically like. No big deal. It doesn't mean like
Right.
you're not a girl. It just means you are a girl who just likes things that are maybe typically more male oriented. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. And you know, and vice versa. Same thing. Like we knew dudes that were really into sports. I mean, I grew up, I was very artsy growing up. I mean, my first love was drawing and poetry and music.
That's nice.
You know, that was me. And I didn't really relate to the jock or the gym rat or that type of person as much. And you know, but I didn't want to like cut off my private parts and like wear, you know, I just, you know, to me it like it just okay, maybe it's something that was, you know, not as manly, but this I and the thing is that drives me nuts. It's like there's nothing wrong with trying to help confuse kids. The problem is we're confusing not confused kids. Like if there's truly a kid
Hmm.
is saying like, hey, I don't know who I am, I don't feel right, I, you know, and that there's always been that. I mean, I hung
Right.
with kids who BMX'd, you know, it's the skaters. I hung out, you know, with the goth kids. Hung out with the basketball kids that played basketball. The soccer kid, I'm Portuguese. I got, you know, soccer was everywhere. Like, so it's like I had a lot of different groups of people. And yeah, there's always the groups of, you know, in those groups are people who didn't feel like they fit in or they were out of place, and that's okay. But when you go to a kid who like seems pretty comfortable in his own skin and
Right.
hey, by any chance, do you feel like a woman today, or do you feel like a girl today, or you know,
Start planting the seed.
you know, or like just recently, my kids were talking to me because I'm a big believer unschooling. You know, this idea, and I had Carrie McDonald on. Like she wrote a book on it in like I don't it was a while ago the book, but I think I had her on the first time. It was before COVID, and I had her back on because I'm like, oh, and this issue and topic is even more important now. But
Yeah.
it was this idea of like if you do send your kids to school, when they get home, make sure you ask a lot of questions and figure out what are they being told, what are they being taught, because
Mm.
schools used to be a place where you teach a kid how to think. Now we teach them what to think. And you know, there's all these teachers who, in their hearts of hearts, like I believe that like sometimes it's not out of evil intentions. They feel like they're just, you know, giving them important information or a important point of view. But if it doesn't go parallel with mine, then I have a problem with it. And the thing is, like, I don't personally, I mean, my personal opinion is I don't think teachers should be talking to kids about anything that is subjective, you know, and I get it, like history, science, there are some things that are subjective in that, but those are things that people aren't really going to get that upset about. If it's like, okay, they're teaching you this part of history, but there is a alternate perspective on this history. But if you're pushing other agendas, which we know they are, you know,
Hmm.
this idea of critical race theory that was a big topic. If you're having them talk about gender or any sexual anything in school
Right.
when they're kids, like it's scary because it's like okay, the child might not even know that there's something significant going on to come home and tell me, you know, so they might have planted
Right.
seed, and I can't even find that seed to like rip it out and before it turns into a weed. Like I just like I like, hey, what happened at school? And it might, you know, but recently they were talking about Native Americans. Like my kids were asking me about Native Americans. They asked me just a random question about Native Americans. I'm like, somebody's talking about this in school, aren't they? And they're like,
Right.
yeah. And then I'm like, well, are they you as Europeans? You know, your ancestors are Europeans. My wife is Italian. I'm Portuguese. I'm like, are they making you feel bad about being European? But you know, and I'm like trying to figure out, I'm like, because now even something that seems pretty, you know, innocent, like, hey, we're just learning about, you know, the pilgrims, and I'm like petrified that they're making them feel guilty about being Portuguese and Italian, you know, but that's
Colonizers.
yeah, exactly. You know, and it's like you should not you are not responsible for the, you know, the thousands and thousands of millions of ancestors that came before you who
Right.
have, you know, similar nationalities or whatnot. I mean, you go throughout history, like there's plenty like almost every nationality they have some, you know, some things they could be a little ashamed of, right?
Right. And then we sit there and point fingers at each other like it even happened within any of the last few generations too. That always like, we like reprimand each other for stuff that's like, was it you or your parents or your grandparents? You mean your great grandparents? Like probably not. Like, like also just let go that trauma. Like, just move on. Like, you're judging people on these preconceived notions, but with the school, like, it's interesting how, like, with adults, we say, oh, in the workplace, you can't talk about sex and you can't talk about race. And these are all harassment suits, actually, in an adult workspace for people who are over 18. But then as soon as you're under 18 and you're a child in school, and then all of these topics are now on the table and it's totally fine to talk about. And it's like, I mean, back in when I was a child, I remember that was very not allowed, and I grew up in a country rural school. And if, teachers had been, putting ideals that were not parallel with our parents, and they would have not been there. So there's kind of this interesting, like, that they also have this superiority nowadays as well. Like, they're not also scared of parents, and children aren't scared of parents either, or authority. And not necessarily a bad thing to be not scared of authority, but like, just in the way that, they don't, it seems like they can go to their teacher and they could say, oh, XYZ. The teacher could just then almost take over. Like, they have more guardianship than actual parents, or like schools, or like sometimes the state like overrides you. And I think that is just like mind bending. And especially with this like gender situation, like here in, just for example, like here in Hawaii, they send it home on the paper from school, like, if your child feels like a different gender, then we'll talk to them about that. And you're like, I'm sorry, pardon me? Like, this is a very vague statement. And it's like, you shouldn't even be talking about that at all. So it's interesting. Like, when did it cross the line between school and like sex? I don't, like, when did that happen?
I think it's been going on for a while. Like they just slowly
Yeah.
been like kind of migrating. These plans,
Boiling the frog.
yeah, like it always seems like anytime something seems like to pop out of nowhere, you do a little bit of research and you're like, oh, okay, this has been going on for a while.
Mhm.
It's been a well thought out, long-term plan, and you take little steps. It's just like the COVID thing, right? It was like, they knew what the end game was, but what they wanted to do was like they knew they couldn't just like say, out of nowhere when everybody's living their lives normally, like they couldn't just say, hey, we're going to lock everything up and we're going to force you to get a vaccine if you want your they couldn't do that, right? So what they need to do is like, hey, let's just stop the spread of it, and like just stay home for
Right.
a couple weeks, and then a couple weeks turn into a couple months, and a couple months turn into your life never being back normal again. So
Right.
that was that they it was like so that's the thing, like a lot of times it's hard to get people to see the bigger picture, like people like you and I who like analyze these things and maybe think about these things more than we should. um we're always like zooming out and like, okay, what's the purpose, what's the goal,
Right.
what could potentially go really wrong here? And I think the average person is just looking at the specific thing that's going on right now, and it's like,
Right.
oh, that's all they want. They're just doing this. It's no big deal. It's not. I'm like, no, you don't see the big picture. It's like it's this, then it's social credit scores, then it's tracking everybody, then it's
Right.
cities, then it's like you have zero privacy and everything is being monitored at all times. And they can control every aspect of your life. And just like Klaus Schwab said, you will own nothing and be happy because
Mm-hmm.
you control you, but we'll give you the things that you need to be
You'll
happy.
eat the bugs. You'll
Yeah.
love it. You
Before
won't go anywhere. You'll love that too.
before we expand on these topics too much, because I'm notoriously, you know,
Oh,
over the
I can too.
times. So, which I'm sure the commenters will say in the comments at some point that I should have let my guests talk a little more, but
Screw
but
you, commenters.
I actually don't read them. I'm just assuming they're saying that because I do. I'm pretty good at self-reflecting. I'm like, fuck, I talk too much on that podcast. I should.
Oh, no, that's nice. You're nice. We're having a great time.
Well, I feel like conversation's a dance, right? And like sometimes one person takes the lead. Sometimes I don't really keep track of that stuff. It's just
Yeah.
just trying to. But I do want to get too far into the weeds of these other topics. for people who don't know, as you know, some people I'm sure know you. You were on the You Have Unwanted. You've been on Monica Perez. You do interviews, your own show, the Unjected show with Zach and Scott from the Rebunked podcast, which is a friend of mine. And but let's get into your origin story. Let's
Yeah.
get where you grew up, who you were growing up, some of your inspirations, some of your influences, and then everything that kind of led you into who you are today.
Oh, yeah. I like it. Yeah, going way back. That's fun. Well, so I kind of just mentioned, I was raised out in the country. I grew up in Star, Idaho, which is like the tiniest little rural town. It had like 1,000 people in it. Very like Republican and conservative and yada yada. And I never really like growing up, it was not like holistic health or medical freedom in general. Like none of these topics were ever, like in my forefront. Um, at least not that I knew of yet. But when I was 14, I had actually taken the Gardasil vaccine, which was the HPV shot, which is like for cancer preventative, so amazing. Just an experiment from Merck completely. And it's eerily similar to today. It's like 3-part series shots, and you do it like once every 6 months. And my parents didn't know any better, and I didn't know any better. And so I took this HPV shot, and after the third injection, I like literally became like a thriving teenager to debilitated. And I had all of these heart conditions that came up overnight to where, my heart would race up to like 200 beats a minute when I was asleep. And so I couldn't even go upstairs or I couldn't do anything. I would get so winded. I couldn't lift over 5 pounds anymore. It was like I couldn't like had all these restrictions on myself. And of course I became like this instant uh patient to big pharma because of the problems that it caused me. But of course, no one knew that it was like a vaccine injury. Like I would go to hospitals after hospital or specialists, and it would just be an anomaly. Or they would like a lot of the times I would hear like you're having an anxiety attack. I'm like, this is not an anxiety attack when I'm fast asleep, you guys. Like there's just no way. And when years passed, I became pregnant with my first, and that's when I dove into the pharmaceutical complex, and I saw like the business of being born and vax, just those like few documentaries. I'd already been like red pilled already, like in the past, zeitgeist style, but I didn't realize how deep the like vaccine rabbit hole was. And so when I was pregnant with her, I learned that there wasn't any control studies, and I learned about the lack of testing just in general. Like, they basically just throw all these vaccines in a pot, and then they're just like, this is great, and they're approved and super effective, and you can't sue us if anything happens. Um, and I just knew I was going to do a different way, and I didn't want to go with this program. And I was instantly met with that ostracization, which many of us, learned in 21, but this was before. And I know that many parents have been doing this for, generations now, but it was like, what about polio? And you're a murderer. And how could you, not want to vaccinate your child? Like you're out of your mind. And just being just ostracized, and then not told that you can't even receive, like you can't go to the doctor's office or whatever. And um so I was 22 at the time, and I realized, wow, like I when you choose medical autonomy, no matter what it is, uh you're gonna get pushback from people who just don't understand or just regurgitate medical books, essentially, just, repeating information or waiting for their insurance payout or just completely disconnected from the actual Hippocratic oath in general. And, fast forward to 2020, I had actually, this is like the newer part of my story that I'm just starting to tell more of, but I had just gotten married on the day of the lockdown in 2020. And, you know, we literally went into quarantine together. And it was that moment where I was like, wow, this is crazy. Why is anybody locking themselves up, putting on masks? Like, I don't want any part of this. And this, my supposed partner was like, you're crazy and you should just quiet down and don't worry about these things. And I'm like, holy shit, I am not, in a situation that I thought I was in. And it just, I realized that I wasn't the only one now facing ostracization, like in your own home. And, it was happening to so many of us, where you just felt alone or just disrespected for, not wanting to put a mask on or thinking this vaccine agenda was insane. And so, that kind of emotional and then my armor that I had like already built up. And then on top of like the actual circumstance and of what the reality of the situation was in spring of 2021, which was that hundreds of thousands of women were reporting having menstrual changes from being with a vaccinated partner, getting the vaccine themselves, or even working in a close office space, not so coincidentally at the same time, Pfizer is really like trickling out their clinical trials. At page 9 talks about exposure to trial participants, which was kind of like the final alarm bell for me. And when I really dove into what they talk about with trial participants, it was shocking to me because it's, considered 30 days before conception by skin contact, inhalation, sweat, saliva. I mean, basically any type of interaction is considered an exposure for the man or the woman. And, when you just had all of these anecdotal evidence at the same time, it just seemed apparent that, people were going to need a place to, one, find community that they've lost, but more importantly, what's going to happen to the future of humanity, and the integrity of the actual human genome here. We need to be able to protect ourselves and say, if I don't want to have a vaccinated partner and I don't want to reproduce with somebody who is or who's been sleeping around with vaccinated people, that I should have a place to go. And at the time that was very censored, obviously. I'm sure you remember like the height of 21, but we managed to launch as an app for Apple and Google Play Store in May. And things got really tricky. I'll stop rambling for now, but we right about 60,000 members. We were thrown off of the Apple Store for misinformation due to the COVID pandemic.
So, when did you move to Hawaii with your office?
I didn't even say that. I moved to Hawaii 10 years ago.
And was there any specific reason, or you just wanted to go somewhere magical?
Yeah, basically, I came to visit like everyone else does, and then I went home and I was scraping ice off my windshield one cold morning, and I was like, I never want to do this ever again, and I'm gonna go live by the sea. And so yeah, I was out. I came when I was 19 to Hawaii, but I really loved the people and the experience here. But then, really when 2020 came, like that was also very much affected because Hawaii just went like totally the other way. They loved the vaccine. We were kicked out of basically any public space as an unvaccinated individual. We were definitely treated poorly here in Hawaii, but I still love this place. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's weird because before 2020, I was also like, I'm from Massachusetts, even though I'm not like in love with Massachusetts politics. Actually, I hate Massachusetts politics, but I did enjoy the city and I liked the people. And I politics was one of those things that like you could kind of separate in your everyday life.
Right.
You could just, I could go to a Celtics game, I could go to Boston or whatever, and just enjoy a night out and go out to dinner and meet people, and everybody got along and you always made friends, and it just had
Yeah.
small town feel in a big city. And same thing with like where I was born. I was born in Portugal in Chaves up north, and it was just one of those things where like I've always been super proud of being Portuguese, and both my state and my home country like just completely turned my perspective on them like upside down, because I was so just disappointed with like
Oh,
how and I don't know, it's like Portuguese people aren't very political, like they, and maybe that's the same thing with Hawaii. And when you're not very,
there's a lot of Portuguese people down here too.
yeah, there is actually. We brought the ukulele to you for a little fun fact.
Oh, really? That's cool. Good
Yeah.
work, guys.
It's actually funny because it was one of my good friends who told me that. He's like, because he would go to Hawaii often. He's just loved Hawaii. And his daughter lived down there for a little bit, and he would go visit her, and just always loved Hawaii. And then one day he's just like, it was the Portuguese who brought the ukulele to Hawaii. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, I know there's a lot of Portuguese down there, but I'm like, are you sure? And I looked it up, and he was right. And
I'm keeping that fun fact in my pocket. I'm going to use that again.
but it's one of those things where like Portuguese people aren't like probably I've never been to Hawaii, but I'm assuming very similar, where like they just, it's politics isn't something they like to like spend their whole lives or all their time thinking about. Or like Hawaiian people seem to be very spiritual, very like one with nature. They like being outside, like enjoying other things and other habits. And they're not people who are going to be like stuck to the TV watching every headline
Yeah,
so they could debate about it. And Portuguese
true.
people, like the only thing Portuguese people really care about is like wine, food, and soccer. Like that's the only thing. Like my parents, I could talk to them about politics or what's going on in the world. They just look at me and they're like, yeah, okay. Not very passionate, not a very deep, conversation. They don't seem very emotionally invested in the conversation. But I get them talking about soccer, or they go to like to eat and like the food, like they can talk all day about the food. They just like that's the only things they care about, which it makes it's why Portuguese people are, probably similar to Hawaiian people, are people that people connect with, and they like going to those places because the people are nice. They don't like conflict. They don't look, but and then it's like that saying, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything. And it's just one of those things where like, because they've ignored politics and their focus has been on other things, like they had this trust for what was being told on the TV, that maybe more rebellious type of people like Americans, didn't fall for it. And I'm not to say that there's not a lot of Americans that did fall for it, but I'm saying there's also a lot
Yeah.
who saw through it and pushed back.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. And I like that. It's like the rebellious spirit. And yeah, and even now, like what we just saw with the Maui fire, like a lot of people are even maybe like they were with the vaccine agenda, where they're like, this doesn't feel right. I should say something. But what stops you from saying something? And it's that, wanting the psychological permission and acceptance from the tribe mentality of, once I say what I want to say, I'm no longer, I'm now vulnerable. And especially here on this island where, it is, I wasn't born here. And so I can only imagine how much even more so would be if you were, but just like, you don't want to be called, you don't want to be the crazy person. You don't want to be, no one wants to be the joker. But it's what happens when you say things that are, when people are living in denial because they aren't there yet, they haven't woke up to the matrix, or maybe they never will, they're just not meant to. And, you don't want to, be crazy to every single person. I get it. And so, I think that's also what stops people from like, like I don't know where I'm going with this, but politics is like doesn't even have anything to do with it. It's actually just doing the right thing, the morally correct thing, but then people actually mix it up as if it were politics. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. So like, right now it's like we all should be talking about, what happened with this fire, or, what happened with this. But yet it's just it's just too scared to look at being thought of it as a political problem. And it's like, it's not politics. This is a human issue. This is like a world issue. I don't even believe in politics. I think it's all fake. I
Theater.
think it's 100% fake. Like if you think that anybody you're voting for is real, I'm sorry. Like we'll see you on the next Matrix. But it's like it's just the proverbial like give them bread and circuses and they won't revolt. It's like that's kind of what we're also seeing right now is like people have this like Stockholm syndrome like to the government, like thank you for helping me after you abused me. And um and then they also have that like layer of, and if I vote for somebody else, I'll make a difference. And it's like it's a lot bigger than that, guys. We got work to do.
Yeah, well, and you're making such a good point in regards to, and I absolutely know what you're trying to say, like this idea that like instead of just looking at every issue logically, like they've done such a great job of like having a political stance on every issue.
Yeah.
So it's like instead of just being like, well, this issue isn't political. Why are politics even in the conversation? But it's like now it's like which political team backs this point of view? Oh, is that
Mm.
my team? So that's my point of view. And it's like, well, forget that. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Who cares which, that maybe the other party happens to agree with you on this one issue. Like the vaccine thing was the same thing. I would go to, protests or whatever events, and I would see a lot of Trump signs, and I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
like I've been the anti-vaccine guy for a long time. I've been the crazy guy and I'm kind of, one thing that has come out of COVID, that whole lockdown and everything, that's been I think a good thing is that it's looked at in a much serious light, a
Yeah.
more serious light, where like before, if you were the guy bringing up vaccines, I mean, I've been that guy many of times where people will bring it up and and they'll be like, if I don't say something, then aren't I letting the propaganda spread without, pushing back? I'm like, so I gotta say something. Sometimes my wife, she's like, did somebody say vaccines? Where the hell's my husband? Like, make sure.
Like, don't vaccinate the baby. Like,
And it just want, but I'm like, I was so proud of like letting people know, listen, your pediatrician's telling you that your kid's gonna die if you don't vaccinate them. But you see
right.
those two beautiful kids right there. I'm like, they've never had a vaccine ever. They have no autoimmune issues. They have no health issues. They are
Yeah.
star athletes. They are star. They do cognitively do great in school. They're well behaved. Like, here's a example that they're lying to you. Here's two examples, and I would
Yeah.
be open about it because I think too often parents would be too ashamed to talk about it, or
Yeah.
they don't want to be looked at. Even my wife, I remember my wife saying like, "Oh, are we going to be looked at as the unvaccinated family?" And I'm like, "That's fine," because you know what's going to happen.
Good.
They're gonna have that stigma might be put on us immediately, and then little by little, we're gonna break through that stigma. Because they're gonna be like, you know what, these kids are healthy. They're never sick. They're never out of school because they're sick or have a cold or whatever. They have
Yeah.
no allergies. They have no. I can eat peanut butter near them. I can,
Right.
they're fine, they're great behaved kids, like they're good athletes. Like it just, to me, it's I'm like, let them, because I'm like, hopefully what we're doing is we're creating a ripple in regards to, I'm like plugging my own show on my own show.
Yeah. That was good though. It's true. We have to plant the seeds. And it's true because when I was pregnant with my daughter, it was the mom doing the advocating for anti-vax. I remember her, I distinctly, and being like, wow, like she could do that. I could do that too. And when you make that first leap for people, and show them the water is warm. You can come in. You don't have to be scared. I'll hold your hand while you do it, and I'll help you along the way. It gives people who we're scared of it being a political issue, or we're waiting for the psychological permission, or, it gives them the courage and the bravery to, to do what's right. And yeah, it's like we just showed it actually on this last Friday show, Scott and I, with the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated children, the graph. I can't remember the doctor right now for the life of me, but
Dr. Paul Thomas, he's been on the show. Yeah, he's a pediatrician. He had the biggest pediatrician YouTube channel on YouTube. Wasn't he even it wasn't even his idea to do the study. Like he basically wanted to, and it's because he was so
he
open.
was chosen.
He was chosen because he happened to be one of those pediatricians that, like, whatever the parents felt comfortable doing, he was okay with. So if you want to fully vaccinate your kids, go through the whole schedule, fine. If you want to not vaccinate your kids, he was okay with that. You want to partially vaccinate, he was fine with that. So like it was a perfect pediatrician's office to
Yeah.
get that information and then review it and compare it and whatnot. And of course, when the findings were that the more vaccines you got, the more likely you were to have health issues, then all of a sudden they like pulled his license and he was having this battle, and it was
Murdered his reputation and character.
yeah,
Just
crazy.
it,
And it's one of
and
the
that's
it's really important because I think it's one of the best and one of the only vax versus unvaxxed or partially vaxxed. You have all the categories, studies like that. And that really is undisputable. You can't, like, this is just, and they broke down everything. And Dr. James Lyons Wheeler was a part of that. He, who's a friend of the show, has been on a bunch. And I highly recommend people checking out the study and the story and going back into archives and finding an interview with him. He was interviewed on The Last American Vagabond. He's been interviewed a bunch, and a sweetheart of a guy. I know on your last episode of the Unjected show, Scott said that he actually, because he is from Oregon, and he said that he actually even got to meet him and hang out with him, which was pretty cool.
yeah.
But
Like,
go ahead.
oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, literally, it's like when you see that data, it's like you want to cringe, right? Because at least I do. Because how doesn't everybody know this? Why isn't this, like, this should be the informed consent that nobody gets? And and I think that's also what I try to implore parents to, like, understand is, like, when we say that there's no control studies, like, what that means is literally they tested the vaccine against, like, another vaccine. Like, let's give them the flu shot and see it against the MMR. Like, and then let's not test all of them all together. And they'll go and give your child 7 injections at one time. And just because they only got 3 shots, those are mixed vaccines. So it's like, there's just so much lack of informed consent also. And like, that's what we're doing, is like literally informing and like helping people give that correct consent. Because when you go into a doctor's office, even today, you ask for the vaccine insert, they will go and give you their printed out sheet that the nurse printed in the back room. And it's like, that's not even an insert. So we also even have to educate people on literally what to look for, because these medical professionals, quote unquote, that they want to, like, they are just repeating the information that Big Pharma gave them at medical school. Big Pharma wrote all of the books. They paid for all of the studies. They paid for every single medication. It's just like, it's just one giant revolving door. And, geez, I would say we probably have a pretty good control study with all of our unvaccinated children on Unjected. Maybe it's too early to say we should do some arranged marriages.
Well, the other thing too is, like, if what the pediatricians are saying is correct, then show me all the homeschooled kids who are being, who are dying because they're not, or all the kids who have medical exemption forms that are coming to school and spreading stuff and causing epidemics. Like, there's no, like, I use a medical exemption form, like, or a religious exemption form, and my kids go to school like nothing's happened. Like they haven't got anybody sick. More than likely, other kids have gotten my kids sick, and
Yeah.
and they're healthy and they're fine, and like it doesn't cause an issue. So it's like, why can't it just be a choice? Because obviously it's not causing a issue in regards to having vaccinated with unvaccinated kids mixed, right? It's not an issue at all. Like, because even the kids who are homeschooled or the kids who have religious exemptions, like we go out, we go to, like I said, Celtics games, we go to soccer games,
Right.
they go to school, they're around other kids. Like it obviously isn't a concern, and doesn't cause an issue. So it's all about control. It's all about making it harder and harder for you to do it, and then eventually, it just becomes impossible, which is what's happening in Connecticut, and it's happening in California, and all these other places where just like they're just little by little taking away your rights, taking away your,
Yep.
and then using this this fear mongering that it's, if they don't do this, it's because of that, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. And like you said, even the polio thing, I mean, I would hear that over and over again. They're like, oh well, look at polio, and I'm like, I'm so glad that and I have the book right over there, but the real Anthony Fauci having the graphs
Yeah.
and showing like, hey, you know what, when the vaccine was introduced, like we already had a herd immunity, like that's already
Yep.
like it was the vaccine's not getting the credit, and really you can see it in present day how they can rewrite history and create this facade, this illusion of what really happened, because it's happening with the COVID vaccine. Like people honestly think that we're back to normal because of the COVID vaccine. Well, guess what? Before the vaccine was introduced, like nobody I knew was dying from COVID. After the vaccine was introduced, nobody was dying from COVID. Like it just one of those things where like no, it wasn't having, and not to say that people weren't dying from COVID. Some people died, like, but some people die all the time. Hospitals are always full. They've always been full. They're like
Yep.
motels, they have to be full, because if those beds aren't filled with people, producing income for the business, then they'll be out of business. So it's like people don't understand, like that's a part of the way hospitals work. Those beds have to be filled. And like look at the people who were dying of COVID. It was like, oh, old people and people who had other illnesses. Well, guess what? Those are the people who die of shit all the time. Like that doesn't change anything. Like that's not like that wasn't a new thing, And it just, to me, and I could find myself getting worked up again, because it's just like and this is the parent in me. Like we're just we started off talking about parenting. Like the thing about all these other issues, I would do shows on 9/11, right? I didn't have any personal connection to it. I've done shows on the OKC bombing. I've done shows on so many of these issues, like even vaccines. Like my kids, they weren't vaccinated, so it's like I didn't have a direct effect on my life. But then when COVID happened, it was like it just reminds me again of like, all these poor kids with masks, all these poor teenagers who had to want to go back to school and were forced to get vaccinated to go back to their universities, all these people who just want to put food on the table for their family and had to get vaccinated to go back to work, all these people who are having health issues now. And there's, in many cases, there's no way that their doctor's ever going to link their now, random health issue to the vaccine, and
Mhm.
dealing with these health issues because of it, and the people that I know, I know I've heard stories from multiple people, or more than multiple, I mean, tons of people who have said they have not felt right since they've gotten the vaccine. And the doctors are like, we can't do it. Well, what do you like? We'll do a couple tests and and nothing happens, and it's just like, there's all these things that, and all the trauma. I saw parents that were screaming at their kids if their masks were below their nose. And it's just like, you have traumatized your child. And the worst part is like, it's not even really the parent's fault. The parent's an idiot, but that idiot fell for a trick that
Mhm.
was, well funded and well thought out and well rehearsed, and was regurgitated by everybody that they thought they could trust. So it's like not even the parent's fault, and that's the part that's frustrating, because it's like sometimes you get mad at people for having these, uh, just tribalistic beliefs, and then you're like, well, should I get mad at them, or should I get mad at the puppet masters who tricked them? It's like that saying, it's easier.
Channel the energy in the correct place.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm right there with you. Like, I mean, it's like I do have to like reel myself back in as well, because even in Hawaii, we'll see it here where a parent has a mask on the child, and I get fucking fumingly angry over. I actually get fucking pissed off. I do. I will glare at you like you're a fucking pedophile. I will look at you like something is wrong with you. And but then at the same time, it's like never gonna wake that person up. They're gone. They're asleep at the wheel. And so, if I have to like what I, at least for me personally, in my opinion, what I remember is just that like I believe that we are all here. We are spirits in our human uh, body, which is basically just our meat puppet this time around, and we're just all here aiding in this process in different ways. And so maybe that person who's is abusing their child with the mask, they're all playing this different contract that they came to fulfill. And it's like, yes, that's literally it's like instead of worrying about them, we have to focus back. And then if I channel the energy back into inject it, I can actually help more people that way, right? And it's like and that's just what I think is most important right now for people is to just find your community and people who think like you and that respect you, and have that like-minded you know uh, outlook on the world, not so you can be an echo chamber, but so that you can just feel belonging. You can feel like you have your tight-knit group, because they want us to sit here and bitch on the internet all day long. They don't want us to get in person, because when we get together in person, then they can fear us, because a lot of us together with the same idea that is not their idea, that's when they're in trouble. And they know that. And so, they're just going to always keep censoring us. They're always going to try to stop us at every step of the way. And, that's what we got to do, just find your group that will also look at parents like pedophiles if they mask their children.
Well, it's one of those things where I have to remind myself that like, okay, you're probably traumatizing the kid, but
Right.
you're a traumatized adult. You've been traumatized. There's adults
Yeah.
that are driving around in convertibles with a mask on, on a sunny day. And I'm just like, that person has been traumatized. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you're weak-minded, if you're not a person who asks questions or push back, or you've been, maybe you were a really good kid. You were just one of those kids that like you always listen to
Right.
your teacher, you always listen to your parents, you always listen to, whoever the crosswalk guy, whoever it is, you always listen to authority. And now authority for multiple years for telling you, put on a mask, be afraid, put on a mask, be afraid. By the way, here's a ticker of all these numbers and all these people who are dying and all this. It's like if you do that long enough, a weak-minded person will just they'll lose it. They'll lose all logic. They'll lose all ability to look at it without emotionally being afraid and fear and whatever. And so it's just one of those things where it's just like you go from being angry to eventually feeling bad and feeling bad for this person who's been tricked. And and I try to convince myself like I am as certain that I am correct on this issue as they are certain that they're correct on this issue. Like,
Yeah.
they're equally as certain. And I have to, remind myself that it's like, they truly believe they're protecting themselves or people around them. And that's what's causing the emotional, just blowing up when you bring up the topic and people are like, oh, you should be vaccinated, whatever. But the thing is, people like us who pushed back when it was the hardest to do so, when people were getting upset and people were like, deleting our numbers from their phones because they knew that now we're like super vaccinated people, like, and they thought we were crazy. When we planted those seeds, going back to planting the seeds, like we are planting seeds. Like we might, I always say this, and I truly believe this because I've seen it happen in my personal life over and over again, where there'll be somebody that I'll get in a little bit of a conflict with because they disagree with me, and I'll try to find a really polite way of just getting the information through to them. I'm like, okay, they don't agree with me. They're pushing back and they're getting emotional, but let me just, I feel like, maybe I cracked their armor a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
eventually. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's another podcast, maybe it's another conversation with somebody else, maybe it's a documentary they ran into, maybe it's your show that they ran into. Like there were cruising on the internet or something. They ran in some more information, and everybody was just cracking at that armor. And then eventually, that seed planting, just kept getting watered and watered and watered by all this truth. And eventually, the red pill came from out of the ground, and they're like, you know what? I see it now, but we're all contributing to that. And,
Yeah.
I would get people who'd say, like, oh, there's just some people who will never get through to. And they're right. But you never know who those people are, and the people who will eventually see the light, for a lack of a better term. So I like to at least attempt on most people. There are definitely some people that I'm like, I'm not even going to try. This person is too far gone. But on most people, I'd like to get, I have a little bit of hope that I'm like, maybe I could just help them in their journey and in their path. And I can just kind of have a conversation. I'm pretty good at dealing with conflict. Like when if there's conflict, I stay calm, and, I try to be as zen as possible. I exercise, and I get all my frustration out there, and so, and then I'm calm the rest of the day. But it to me, like, what's your thoughts? Because you are surrounded, like myself, you're in Hawaii, I'm in Massachusetts, surrounded by people who disagree with us. Like, do you find yourself more often than not, attempting to get through to people, or have you gotten to the point where, like, kind of like Sam, our mutual friend Sam Tripoli says, like, only save those people who want to be saved?
No, I'm kind of like I'm on the threshold. Part of me, like, I do understand, like, kind of the point that you brought up too, which is this ironically is all out of love and in the silliest way possible, that the vaccinated people who mandated and pushed the vaccines, it's because they genuinely love and care about you and they want you to be safe. And literally, that's our exact argument on our side, is that we love and we care about you and we want you to be safe. So we're actually fighting about literally the same exact thing, which is just love, care, and concern and safety for each other. And, ironically, anger is sadness's bodyguard. What do we do when we are sad? You put up that bodyguard because it protects you, right? And maybe these people are starting to wake up, and we don't want this red pill to be the hard pill to swallow. We want them to wake up with love and say, hey, we're really sorry that you fucked up, but we'll still be here for you, because at the end of the day, we got to come together to overcome the bigger giant. But it's part of me, yes, I'm like, I will, like, try to do some, I'm kind of like a silent advocator. I like vaccine cards and leaving them places, and, like wearing t-shirts or stickers. But then, sometimes if I'm feeling on it, I'll just straight up like start just, but, I don't like dealing with the feeling of, so yeah, part of me is just kind of like, fuck it, keep on keeping on. If anybody wants to join, they will. But at the same time, when you, like you said, when we plant the seeds over and over and over again, we're planting those seeds not for ourselves, but so that our children can sit under the shade of those trees. So, that's what we have to look for, is that we are aiding, not in this awakening, not for us. It's so our children have a better existence, because I couldn't imagine if we just sit here and do nothing, what will they have, right? So that's why we do it all, right?
I'm one of those people, like, I don't like conflict. I don't like, I feel like it weighs, like, well, it doesn't just weigh on me. I think it weighs on us all, right? We always,
Yeah.
when we can squash a conflict instead of it ponder, even if you think you're not thinking about it, it just, this negative energy that kind of stays with you. If
Yeah. Linger.
yeah, it lingers because you're fighting with a family member or a friend or whatever, you're not getting along. And but my desire to get the truth out, or my desire to try to inform somebody or give them at least just a different, I don't want to say inform somebody like I have all the answers, but like just give them a different perspective, like,
Yeah.
it's just much greater than my fear of conflict. So I sometimes cannot help myself, and I have to end up saying something. But you're right. I mean, we can only do so much. We can only save so many people. And, something that you brought up earlier that I think is really important too is, enjoy the moment and enjoy, I feel like during COVID, we got so caught up with fighting,
Yeah.
whatever we were fighting and whoever we were fighting, we almost forgot why we were fighting, right? Like it was like we're fighting because we want to have the right and the ability to enjoy our lives, live it to the fullest, be with our friends, be with our family, have the freedom to do so, have the freedom to live this life however we want to live it. Um, and then we got so caught up with the fight that we stopped doing all that living, right? And we stopped
Yeah.
all that enjoying, and we stopped doing, and that's why community is so important. I mean, we're at our best when we're in tribes, when we're in communities, when we're around people we love and others. I think so many of our traditions stick around, not so much because of the love for the tradition itself, but more about the community that those traditions bring. I have Muslim friends that, aren't really strict practicing Muslims, but they love Ramadans because it's like, okay, we fast together and then we eat together,
Right.
and same thing with like Portuguese people. Like we make sausage, we make wine. My dad's been making wine since since as long as I can remember. My grandparents made it,
Mhm.
my grandparents, and even as a kid, I'm like, Dad, wine's not that expensive. This is a lot of work. And he's like, yeah, but he's like, it's better. And I realized like the thing that he wasn't telling me was, what he really enjoyed was the laughing and eating together and all the friends and family that making it brought to the home, and the time they got to spend together. Because it's like, okay, if they weren't making this wine, they wouldn't have a justification to all hang out this much and hang out a little bit more and spend some time together. And so you look at a lot of the, you look at church. I'm not, I was raised a Catholic, but I'm not a religious person. I kind of rebelled against that too. Like I've done just about everything in my life growing up, but I as I'm older, I appreciate it because it's like, okay, like it brings people together. It gives you
Mm.
it gives you a reason to ask the bigger questions, like
Right.
what is, like, we were talking about capitalism a little bit earlier. We kind of scraped the surface of that topic, and that's one of the things that, like, I think if you are stuck in the wheel, if you're a mouse on a wheel just kind of running in place, just trying to get as many ones and zeros in your bank account and just trying to buy as much material things as possible, that sometimes you need church on Sunday and somebody to say, hey, life's about who you are as a person, your moral compass, like being good to your neighbor, being a good person that you can look in the mirror and be happy with. And some people need that. And so I think all these things are really important. And I think that, we can't get too caught up in fighting, whoever the hell we're fighting, that end up losing all the things that really make life worth living.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, and that's kind of what they wanted anyways from all of us is what happens when you separate yourselves from human interaction and touch and communication and fresh air or sunshine. All of these things contribute to the overall health and well-being and sanctity like of you, right? And so that's them just getting you little by little by little. And even the people who are awake, that's still how they get us, right? Because fear or anxiety or even because we aren't fearless or anxietyless. Those people who went through trauma enough to put on masks, yes, they are in trauma. But even people like us, we had to deal with, PTSD of like getting kicked out of places, losing family, losing friends, being totally made fun of, death threats, whatever it might be. And so, also just for us too, like that's as the freedom and truth community, whatever you want to call us, like we need that to like help keep our lights shining, keep our cups full, like, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And yeah, I mean, what help will we be if we don't have anything? And so, that's kind of the silver lining and blessing in disguise too, is like even all of the friends that we don't have anymore, for whatever reasons, now we've gained all this new friends and community, right? And so now that's kind of like how COVID helped us make our own wine. We took it and we just had to transform it into something else. And now we have all these podcasts and friends and people and like communities and events. And we actually have a whole, my world is so different because of COVID, but also in the best way possible too. So we just always have to put it in perspective. That's for sure. It's only life is so short. We can fight the whole time, but we also have to have fun.
Yeah, not a doubt. And you're right. I mean, the Union of Unwanted came out of COVID. It came because of COVID.
Right.
Me, Charlie, Mike, and Sam. I invite them all on to kind of hang out on a Friday night, and we're just recording a podcast, and we're talking about all the censorship we were dealing with during the lockdowns and all that stuff. And then Mike from the OBDM show is the one who's like, "Yeah, we're kind of like a union of the unwanted." And what he meant, big tech and YouTube and Google didn't want us, right? And the mainstream didn't want us. And then we're like, dude, there's something to that name. Hold on to that name. Somebody write. And Mike bought the URL like while we were talking. He's like, let me buy the URL real quick. So he bought it,
Yes.
just kind of expand on it. But what we need, like, and then that's in a group text. I'm like, hey guys, how about we put together a similar like roundtable discussion, but we just gather all the unwanteds, and create a podcast and do a episode. It was supposed to be like a kind of a one and done episode, and then it just kind of kept growing. But it was because of the need of community. I mean, we were all in this weird twilight zone where it's like, I see that we're being lied to. It's
Yeah.
obvious to me that none of this makes any scientific or logical sense, but everybody else around me is calling me crazy. And I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like being on death row. I don't
Yeah,
like that's I literally
that's true.
I guess like I'm literally telling everybody I didn't do it, and everybody's saying you're guilty. Like I'm like, this is the worst feeling ever. And so when the launch came about, it was like that was one of the things that we got the most positive feedback about, not just from listeners, but from participants, other guests on the show. That like I felt like I was crazy, and now when I'm on a call with like 10 or 12, 13, 15, 20, at sometimes 20 people who all think like me and are seeing the same things. I'm like, I don't feel crazy anymore. Like it feels good to know that there's people out there and connecting with them. So without a doubt, it's important.
Mm-hmm. Because that's what the propaganda machine wants is for you to feel like you're alone and your belief, and you're literally not at all. There's so many more people like you that think like you and believe what you believe, but it's just the media just doing the divide and conquer. And yeah, no, I love all that. I'm glad that I've found all of you amazing humans through all these years.
I know we got off track with your little bit of your origin story, but so what happened? So you got married, or you were gonna get married on when the lockdown started, and then I mean, what is it, to be continued, or you're gonna leave us hanging here? Is there a movie?
No, we had gotten married and went into lockdown. We spent the last few years together. We actually have two children, but no, my love for Unjected and the truth has you know driven me to we had to separate ways. But it's just because I know deeply what it's just to resonate with people. Like I know what it's like to be the unvaccinated, crazy conspiracy theorist. Like I feel you to the fullest extent of your being. And so, just know that you deserve love and respect for anything that you believe in. And if you want to find your apocalypse partner, find them because it'll make your life a lot easier. And so I think we had said, yeah, we got thrown off of the Apple store back in 21, but we, we didn't go down without a fight. We've been now on unjected.com the last few years, so you guys can still find us there for dating, friendships, community. And then we even have blood and fertility listings as well. So like sperm, eggs, breast milk, literally anything you can think of for unvaccinated people. But just if you want to choose a different path, or you're set in your convictions and you know what you believe in, it's a good place to start. Whether you're wanting love or just friends, we all need a little bit of something.
Without a doubt. It's funny because it's kind of a recurring theme with like so many people's relationships where COVID kind of I don't know if it shine a light on a side of people that you didn't necessarily think existed, or maybe you don't know you picked the wrong apocalypse partner until you actually go through the apocalypse, and then
Yeah,
and but it just like there's certain issues that like you have to draw the line on. I mean, like I've always been into, just different perspectives on history and medicine and health and going down these rabbit holes. But it wasn't until we had kids that like I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna see how much my wife really, you know, cares about my opinion or respects my opinion
right.
or will entertain my opinion and consider it. And really, we went through similar battles with, during that era, because I'm like, I was sold on one perspective. She was seemed sold on that perspective until she had kids and became a mother, and pediatricians and all her family members are telling her otherwise. And now
Right.
it's like, okay, now you're like, your trust for my perspective and my opinion is going to be tested, and I'm going to give you information, and I'm going to give you, but when you're talking about, the health of the most delicate thing that you've ever created and the most important thing in your life, your children, like you don't want to get it wrong. And I understand that fear. I remember reading that you got kicked out of your pediatrician's office. I also got kicked out of my pediatrician's office and got a letter in the mail saying I was not welcome back. But that was because they were harassing my wife. Like I would work and she works, she's in the restaurant business. So, the kids, a couple times a week, they're like with me during the day or with her during the day. And then they're with me at night and, on Thursdays and Fridays. So sometimes she would bring the kids to the pediatrician while I'm at work, and she would, get harassed about not getting vaccinated. She's like, I can't deal with this anymore. She's like, they make me feel like a bad mother. They make me feel like a bad
Yeah.
person. And I'm just like, she's like, I just can't do it. And I'm like, you know what? I'll do it, because I'm like, I hate conflict, but I will do my best to try to squash it and put out the fire immediately and whatnot. And I get there, and we give them the kind of like the wink, wink, nod, nod thing, like, yeah, we're gonna wait to vaccinate our kids. We're still waiting, and we've been, my kids like, and then she gets pushy with me, and I'm like, listen, I'm like, back in the day, you used to have a monopoly on information. Today we have the internet. I'm probably better research on this topic than you are. You stopped researching when you got your PhD, when
Yeah.
or you became a pediatrician, you got your MD, whatever it was. Like, you're just regurgitating what pharmaceutical companies tell you. And, and I'm just like, my kid has only come into this office to check his height and weight. And at the time he's like, my son, I think was like 6 or 7, whatever he was. And I'm like, you know, 6 years ago, you told me he was going to die if he didn't get, every vaccine you recommended. It's six.
It's still coming.
Yeah, I'm like, he's, I'm like, you've been wrong about every piece of advice you've given me. I'm like, he's never in here. He's never sick. We check his height and weight and we move on. Like, that's it. I'm like, and we're going at it. And I'm like, I don't want to have this argument with you right now. I'm like, I'm giving her information. I'm like, I even brought up, like, hey, do you know who the CDC whistleblower is? I'm like, you don't? I'm like, well, I've had Dr. Brian Hooker on my show. And I'm like, I can inform you about a story that you should probably know while you're pushing vaccines on to children. I'm like, maybe you should know about the story. Maybe you should be well informed and well rounded on your perspectives and know about and it's just like, and I'm like, and then I find myself getting like upset, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have a conflict in front of my kids. I'm like, let's just drop it. And like, and she just goes off again. And I'm just like, so, and then I'm like, listen, this is like super unprofessional that like I'm trying to avoid this conflict getting out of hand, and you just keep pushing. Because to me, my kid, now you're confusing my child, because my child trusts his father, but this
Right.
doctor is, what looks to him, this doctor is saying that my father's doing something dangerous by not giving me something. Luckily my kids have never been vaccinated, so they're petrified of vaccines anyways. I'm like, a needle, is that how you get a vaccine? They're like, hell no, I've never been touched with a needle. Like, they hate needles because they haven't gotten comfortable with them, right? And but it just, like, to me, it was just like so unprofessional. And the worst part is that that's not like a rare occurrence. Like, that happens all the time. I would talk to parents, and they would just talk about how pushy their pediatricians are. I'm like, that's like going to your drug dealer back in the day for some weed and like, you want some coke? I'm like, no, like
Well,
I got
I
some.
mean, I love that you make this point though, because I want to say something. Because well checks are not mandatory. You are not under any obligation to bring your child to a wellness check to check on their height or weight. It is not illegal to miss a wellness check or to never go. And actually, it's like going to your drug dealer and not picking up drugs when you go there because they don't understand why you're here. The only reason wellness checks exist is to get drugs. That is it. They are vaccine pushing appointments that they put a height on the paper for you to call for like for shits and giggles. So actually it is like going to a drug dealer and not picking up anything. And that's why they get so angry at you because they're like, why are you wasting my one insurance payout that I'm going to get from Blue Cross Blue Shield? Now you're just pissing me off. Like it's true. Just stay away like from you don't need a fucking pediatrician. If anything, I implore everyone to go to our partner, twc.health. That's where Dr. Peter McCullough hangs his hat. They do telemedicine and they are all anti-pharma doctors who like get, they get it. So I implore anybody, like if you want to have some sort of medical care, reach out to like them first. Don't even bother with all these jokes. Like literally it's just a joke these days. And then even just while we're talking about them, if you need a vaccine and medical exemption, you can also get one through TWC. So if you were struggling having your religious exemption approved, go to TWC, you can get a medical exemption. We've had parents reach out to Injected before. It was actually their Catholic school that was rejecting the religious exemption. Isn't that ironic? Because their child was having seizures after having the MMR vaccine. And yeah, they were being denied. And so TWC was able to get these parents a medical exemption. They've helped lots of other people before, but just don't even go to wellness checks. They're just don't go.
Well, it really is, and it's like, and even if you go there for one thing, like pretend your kid has a cold or whatever, it's like, hey, like I know you came here for some weed, but you want some coke, you want some meth,
Right. You want some meth in the back?
like, dude, I just can't, like I don't even smoke weed. It's for my friend. Like, what do you
Yeah.
push this stuff on me? I'm not really into drugs. I just like my friend likes to smoke weed sometimes. It's like, or maybe you want to make some pop brownies, whatever it is. But like
Yeah.
the thing is, like, it's like they come off like like they are, like you said, they are drug dealers. I remember going to a
Just
yeah,
yeah, that's what they're doing.
and the thing is, like every time they add a vaccine, I mean, what is it, like 16 vaccines, like 70 something dosages by the time you're adult, in America, which is
Disgusting.
insane. And by the way, most of those, none of those vaccines have been like tested together. So if the pediatrician says, hey, you want to get this one and this one together because you were late on that one, it's like, let's just do it and see what happens. It's like your kid's a experiment. And it's like, instead of saying like, hey, is your obese kid eating right and getting exercise, or is he on his tablet all day, or is your
Can I
kid,
give them some Ozempic
yeah, well,
so
or
you
like,
can come back once a month?
and the ADHD stuff drives me nuts. I'm like, listen, I'm an energetic kid. I had a hard time sitting down, and paying attention. And now it's even harder because now you have like energetic kids that are used to, tablets, YouTube,
Yeah.
social media, or just YouTube in general, that like constantly gives you dopamine hits because it's constantly giving you, videos that are fast and quick and short and a lot of action.
Hmm.
Like you just don't have patience to like, I find myself doing it. It's hard for me to get through a documentary. Like I used to love documentaries. I could watch the most boring documentary ever if there's some good information in it. But it's just one of those things where like now 2 seconds into a documentary, if it doesn't catch my attention, I'm like, I think, is there something else to watch? Let me pick up my phone. Did anybody call me? Text? It's hard. So with
I'm
that,
even that way with music. I'm like 10 seconds in, I'm like, no, change it, change it. I'm like,
what type of music are you into?
I mean a little bit of everything. I like country music, reggae, island kind music, but I just like I don't know, very ADHD, like depending on the day. I'm like, maybe it could be my favorite song ever, but then another day I'm like, I don't want to hear it at all.
Yeah, but that's kind of the creatures that they're creating, right? We're so instantly just, satisfied with like Instagram likes and it's just like it's hard to recreate that in like the organic world because it's just so
Yeah,
artificial and it's so unnatural to have that much like just instant gratification and satisfaction all at once. So, um,
that's true.
it is. That's why even the kids, like I talk to, I coach my kids in soccer and sometimes I'll talk to parents and they'll say like I can get my kid to turn off his tablet or whatever. And I'm just like, listen, like it's not a fair fight because those YouTube, engineers and psychologists spend all day figuring out how to
Mhm.
get your kid to not turn off that tablet. And your kid's
Right,
just like this kid who's just watching a video that seems entertaining. And then he
right.
suggested another video and he gets to, it's like it's like somebody who opens up a bag of chips. It's like, oh, I'm like such a slob. I can't, stop eating these chips. It's like, no, those chips were designed for you not to be able to stop eating them. They have
Hmm.
artificial flavors and they put the right texture and it just pulls at all the right psychological and emotional strings to get you to not put it down. So it's not a fair battle. I was telling my wife about this. I don't know where it is where they had this casino that is like so it's runs like a real casino. It's like just a complete normal casino, looks like a normal casino. You can go in there and gamble, whatever, but it's owned by tech companies. And what they're doing is they're trying to see, how to get people to like what's keeps somebody on a machine or playing a or whatever. So it's basically a psychological, study. And people think it's just like this casino. And it's like, that's kind of the world we live in.
Oh, oh, completely. I actually, creepy enough, I worked at a makeup store when I was like way back in the day, and I was just hired as just a whatever. And then I come to find out, like 3 months working into it, it was not a makeup store. It was actually a company that was testing surveillance products. And so they would have things like in the shelves, for eye catchers, like to catch your gaze so they could see like what products to put where, like what would like hold your look the longest. They had everything like weight censored. I mean, it was to the point where they had like little tiny cameras. I mean, it was so interesting. It was kind of like the Truman Show. And so you just never really know like what's going on. Like it's not a fair fight because they go like you said they learn and they collect all this evidence even like with uh like our like Tinder or Bumble, that they've tried to compare Tinder to anti-vaxxers or whatever. Like you are the product and very much so with these apps or like Instagram or Facebook because you keep coming back. The push notifications, they spend time researching what colors will make your brain pop off the most dopamine and, what sound you'll react to the best and, what will keep you scrolling the most. And yeah, they're doing it to our kids. Like, no joke. Like, of course they are. If they're doing it to us, imagine what they're doing to the kids.
And
Ugh.
and there's things subconsciously that you just can't you're not even aware that are controlling you. I mean,
Yeah.
look at like the term sex sells, right? Like we've said that forever. You figure like, okay, I know sex sells and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to sell me sex. So I'm just gonna ignore it. And it's like, no, like
It still works.
it works exactly. Even if you're being tricked, it's just you could it's still it's no different than like not the get sexual, but like fake breasts, right? Like same thing. Like guys are still turned on by those fake breasts because it's primitive desires and temptations, even if
Right.
they're fake. Like
They don't work. They don't work for their purpose,
they will not
but
kids, but but they do bring you. They'll give you pillows. Where they
comfort, comfort.
comfort. Yeah, yeah, they're not useless. I'm not saying they're useless. I'm just saying that.
I was the one who said it. That's me after breastfeeding the three children. I'm like, yeah, it's a whole damn job.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's you have a. I mean, you can see that. I mean, I know we're running out of time, but the breastfeeding thing is talking about industries that have been completely just like brainwashed into believing that like oh formula is just as good as breast. It's like not
No,
even.
it's not.
No. But
No.
before we go on a whole nother topic, maybe we'll save it for or hopefully a
Yeah.
future conversation. But let people know where they can stay connected with you. Any social media platforms you're on, the website, if any future plans, any future episodes that you have coming up, and also, are you guys planning on eventually attempting to release it as an app in the App Store again, or have you kind of given that a little bit?
Maybe one day, we'll make our way back to the app stores. But for now, yeah, injected.com. That's definitely where you can find me. Our other socials are at Injected Official, basically everywhere. And then also, if you guys want to keep up on what we're doing, you can sign up just to our Injected email, subscribe. We're going to have more memberships tiers coming out soon. So right now, currently where it is we verify every member based on your unvaccination status by affidavit. So you attest to an affidavit saying that you are unvaccinated and that you understand it's sexual misconduct to lie about your status to partners or to injected. But we understand that there's some people who are still like a little anarchist, and maybe you don't want to be verified. So we'll give you the option for that as well. So you can stay tuned. Probably about a month or so, we'll have even more membership tiers coming out. But ladies, feel free to check it out because it's ladies' night all the time. Ladies are free, uninjected. That's also one fun thing that we do. But recently also just co-authored a book about the Maui fires with a good friend and incredible author of Stephanie Perucci. It's called Burn Back Better. And actually, I might be censored right now because it was on Amazon pre-order like 2 days. They took us down. Actually, if you were watching the podcast with me and Scott, we were like, "What?" Might be back. But regardless, go check it out. You can look it up, Burn Back Better. It should be out by the end of the month, and that's going to be it's a lot of testimony and a collection of evidence that we have gathered. Oh, still nothing. Well, sorry, Bezos. Hey, you know what? Bezos lives on Maui, so that's why he's like, don't let him tell the secret.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Well, we'll figure it out, but it's gonna be, it's as you can tell, there's a lot of information in there that they don't want you to see. And
So is there
we're already
spot they can find the book if they can't find it on Amazon?
if they can't find it on Amazon, we're gonna have it on our clothes store, which hasn't officially launched yet, but it would be shop www.shopinjected.com. So if for some reason it's not on Amazon, you'll be able to find it there.
Yeah,
um,
that's wild that what happened in Hawaii and such little conversation about it. I was so glad that you got to join us on that Union Don't Wanted to discuss it. And people, if you haven't, go back, check out the episode we did on the Hawaii fires. It's definitely worth listening to. And it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. But thank you so much for all the work you do. Thank you so much for being generous with your time. It was a fun conversation as always. I love listening to you. I love having conversations with you. And hopefully we can chat again in the near future. And I'll be
yes.
and also people listening, like we said, she does have her own show with Scott. And
You got to come on our show next.
yeah,
That's what we got to have. I'm going to send you the link. We'll have you on, Ricky. But yes, Friday nights, it's like, oh my gosh, 8 p.m. Eastern. We just switched the time. I'm sorry. 8 p.m. Eastern, Friday nights, anywhere you stream podcasts, The Injected Show. Yes, myself, and then Scott Armstrong from Free Bunk News, like you mentioned, he's our superhero, and our funny man, Zach from Unfit Statesman keeps it very exciting.
yeah,
But
exactly.
it's like toll free number and call in show, so you guys can call and tell us cheeky stories.
Yeah, it's like Love Line, but
Yes.
so, yeah, without a doubt, I will definitely see when I can, squeeze in a Friday. Fridays are a little tough with soccer
We
practices.
can pre-record. We can
Well,
pre.
okay, yeah. So we'll definitely find a day and time to be on the show that I'd love to tell Scott, because I'm sure maybe you'll probably talk to him before I do, that I said hi, and tell Zach I said hi, and
I will.
I'll send you links to the show once it's up and live. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for your time.
Amazing. Thank you. I hope you have a beautiful day. It was fun to talk to you.
Hey, you too. Thanks, Shelby. I really appreciate it.
Bye. Aloha.